Before you allow another distraction to pull you away, pay close attention to this moment, because what is unfolding today is far more significant than it appears on the surface. This is not an attempt to create urgency where none exists, nor is it a dramatic appeal for your attention. It is a reminder that certain windows of opportunity arrive quietly, and the doorway opening on the 6th day of the 6th month is one of them. The 6-6 portal returns each year, but the energetic weight it carries depends entirely on the conditions surrounding it. This year, those conditions are unusually precise. Most people will move through this day without recognizing that they were standing inside a rare convergence at all. Not because they lack awareness, not because they failed some spiritual test, not because they are less evolved than anyone else. They will miss it because their attention has been scattered. Their minds have been crowded with obligations, noise, expectations, and endless stimulation. They will be looking everywhere except the one place this energy is trying to reach. You do not have to make the same mistake. By the time this message is over, you will understand exactly what can drain this portal of its potential and why so many sincere seekers unknowingly sabotage the very opening they have been waiting for. What I'm about to reveal are 9 subtle errors that seem harmless, ordinary, even reasonable. They are the kinds of choices that blend effortlessly into everyday life, yet each one quietly weakens the most important energetic opening available between now and the new moon on June 15th. Most spiritual discussions focus entirely on actions, rituals, techniques, and manifestations. Few talk about what must be removed, yet removal is where the real power begins. Before we examine those mistakes, however, something essential must be understood. You need to know what the 6-6 portal truly represents, and perhaps even more importantly, what it does not represent. Without that understanding, avoiding mistakes becomes meaningless. You would be attempting to protect something that has not yet been established. First, we create the foundation. Then we safeguard it. Many people describe the 6-6 portal as nothing more than a numerological event, a doubling of the number 6 that invites rituals, intention-setting, crystals, affirmations, and ceremonial practices. That perspective is not entirely incorrect, but it barely scratches the surface. It examines the frame while overlooking the image itself. At its deepest level, the 6-6 portal functions as a point of convergence. Imagine several powerful currents flowing from different directions and arriving at the exact same destination simultaneously. Personal energy, collective energy, emotional energy, lunar energy, and inner psychological momentum all merge into a single stream. When separate rivers combine, they do not merely add their volumes together. Something entirely different emerges. The current becomes stronger, deeper, faster, and more transformative than any individual river could have become on its own. That is the nature of this portal. What makes today especially important is the lunar environment surrounding it. We are still moving through the energetic aftermath of the blue moon that arrived on May 31st. The blue moon amplified everything already alive within you. Feelings became harder to ignore. Truths became louder. Patterns became more visible. Internal realities that had been easy to dismiss suddenly demanded recognition. The amplification has already happened. The revelation has already occurred. Yet before the next chapter begins with the new moon on June 15th, there exists this remarkable transitional threshold. The 6-6 portal occupies the space between what was revealed and what is about to be created. The energy available today is not fresh energy arriving from nowhere. It is accumulated energy. It is everything the blue moon exposed. Everything the pause between May 28th and June 1st was preparing within you. Every realization that surfaced in quiet moments, every truth you finally stopped avoiding, every internal shift that has been gathering strength beneath the surface, all of it has been consolidating, waiting for a place to become useful rather than remaining merely emotional. Today becomes that place. Today becomes the moment where inner work seeks expression, and even if you have not been consciously participating in that process, the opportunity still exists. The portal does not ask where you have been. It does not examine your past before opening. It simply opens. The real question is, what happens to the energy you bring into it? Will it be strengthened and clarified by the convergence available today, or will it be scattered by habits so common that most people never recognize them as obstacles? The first mistake appears almost immediately after waking. In fact, for many people, it begins before their feet even touch the floor. They reach for stimulation. They reach for messages, notifications, headlines, conversations, videos, and endless streams of external information. Within minutes, their awareness belongs to everyone except themselves. On an ordinary day, this may seem harmless. On a portal day, it comes at an enormous cost. The earliest hours of the sixth portal hold a unique sensitivity. There is a brief period between sleep and full engagement with the world when the inner voice remains close to the surface. The processing that occurred throughout the night is still active. Insights are still accessible. The deeper layers of consciousness have not yet been buried beneath schedules, responsibilities, and demands. This opening is not symbolic. It is real. It typically remains available for approximately 45 minutes to 1 hour after waking. During that period, your awareness functions differently. If you immediately fill it with external input, you surrender the most receptive portion of the entire day. The channel that was available for something deeply personal becomes crowded with everyone else's priorities. The portal may still be open, but your ability to hear it becomes dramatically reduced. That is why the simplest recommendation is often the most powerful. During the first 30 minutes after waking today, resist the urge to consume. Do not reach for the phone. Do not search for updates. Do not rush towards stimulation. Sit with yourself instead. Allow the residue of the night to surface naturally. Give your inner world room to speak before the outside world begins demanding your attention. That single decision may hold more value than any ritual, crystal, affirmation, or ceremonial practice performed later in the day, because this portal communicates through stillness, and stillness cannot be heard through noise. The second mistake is far more subtle, and ironically it tends to affect the most spiritually dedicated people. It sounds productive. It sounds intentional. It even sounds wise. It often closes the very doorway people believe they are opening. That mistake is attempting to force a specific outcome through the portal. When people connect with the heightened energy of a portal day, they often experience a surge of possibility. It feels like power. It feels like momentum. Naturally, the mind wants to direct that momentum toward a desired result. A relationship, a financial breakthrough, a career opportunity, an answer, a resolution, something tangible. Years of spiritual teachings about manifestation, visualization, and intention setting encourage this response. Every instinct begins saying the same thing. Aim the energy toward what you want most. Push harder, focus more intensely, demand a specific outcome. Yet this is precisely where many people unknowingly narrow a much larger opportunity, because the portal is not simply attempting to deliver what the conscious mind has already decided it needs. It is attempting to reveal what the deeper self is actually ready to receive, and those two things are not always the same. The more tightly you grip a predetermined result, the less space remains for the portal to show you something beyond your expectations. The energy begins flowing through a tunnel rather than an open landscape. What appears to be spiritual focus can quickly become spiritual control. And control is often the very thing this kind of convergence is asking you to release. The moment you begin treating the 6-6 portal as a tool designed to manufacture a specific result, you unknowingly step away from its true purpose. This is where many sincere seekers lose the very gift the portal is offering. They approach the day carrying a carefully constructed list of desires, a relationship they want repaired, an opportunity they want secured, a financial breakthrough they want accelerated, a situation they desperately want resolved. Then they attempt to direct every ounce of portal energy toward forcing that outcome into existence. At first glance, this feels logical. After all, if a powerful, energetic opening exists, why not use it to obtain exactly what you want? Yet this way of approaching the portal misunderstands its deepest function. The 6-6 portal is not a machine designed to deliver circumstances. It is a point where awareness converges. Its greatest gift is not manifestation. Its greatest gift is revelation. It brings clarity, and genuine clarity often disrupts the very desires you thought were permanent. If you are completely honest with yourself, there have likely been moments when you pursued something with tremendous determination, only to later discover it was never truly what you needed. Many people spend years remaining loyal to goals created by older versions of themselves. They continue chasing dreams that belong to identities they have already outgrown because admitting that reality would require confronting an uncomfortable truth. It would require acknowledging that the path they committed to may no longer align with who they are becoming. The portal has the capacity to expose that difference. It can reveal what exists beneath the desire you have been repeating to yourself. It can uncover the deeper longing hiding underneath the surface objective. That revelation is far more valuable than any outcome you could force into existence through sheer intention. Because once clarity arrives, every step afterward becomes more efficient. Energy stops leaking into directions that no longer belong to you. Effort stops supporting foundations that were unstable from the beginning. So for today, loosen your grip. Release the need to control the destination. Allow the portal to reveal rather than obey. The insight that emerges from that openness may challenge your expectations, but it will ultimately serve you far more than anything you could have demanded. Another mistake appears in a form that has become increasingly common in the modern spiritual world. It is the habit of turning every sacred moment into something meant to be witnessed by others. There's nothing inherently wrong with social media. There's nothing wrong with sharing inspiration, insights, or meaningful experiences. But there's a difference between experiencing something and immediately transforming it into content. The moment you begin narrating an experience while it is still unfolding, your attention shifts. You are no longer fully inside the experience itself. Part of your awareness has already left the moment and moved toward an audience. You begin evaluating rather than receiving. You begin documenting rather than inhabiting. Even when the sharing comes from a sincere place, the effect remains the same. The inner experience becomes divided. The 6-6 portal requires undivided presence. It asks you to stay with what is emerging before assigning language to it, before creating a caption, before imagining how others might respond. Some of the most important realizations arrive quietly. They do not seek validation. They do not require witnesses. They ask only for your full attention. Today, let your spiritual experience belong to you first. Allow the emotions, insights, sensations, and shifts that arise to settle within your own awareness before inviting anyone else into the conversation. There is tremendous power in having an experience that exists for no audience beyond yourself. Remain inside it. Stay with it. Let it unfold naturally. If later you choose to share what happened, do so after the process has completed. But during the hours when the portal energy is actively moving through your awareness, protect the intimacy of the experience. The most transformative moments are often the ones that never appear anywhere online. The next mistake involves carrying unresolved emotional tension directly into the convergence. The 6-6 portal amplifies whatever is already active within you. This is one of its greatest strengths. Yet amplification works in every direction. If peace is present, peace grows stronger. If clarity is present, clarity expands. But if frustration, resentment, conflict, or emotional turbulence dominate your inner landscape, those energies receive amplification as well. Many people spend enormous amounts of energy managing unresolved situations without ever addressing them. They convince themselves that because the conflict is not actively exploding, it is under control. Yet beneath the surface, the tension remains alive. On a day like today, that hidden tension can suddenly occupy center stage. A disagreement becomes louder, a frustration becomes more consuming, a difficult interaction becomes harder to release. Before long, the portal's energy is no longer supporting insight. It is fueling emotional reactivity. This is why quiet becomes such important guidance today. Not symbolic quiet, actual quiet. Quiet conversations, quiet reactions, quiet engagement with the world around you. This is not about suppressing truth or avoiding necessary honesty. Certain conversations absolutely need to happen. Certain issues deserve attention. But today is not the ideal day to voluntarily create emotional turbulence. Protect the energetic environment surrounding you. If conflict appears despite your best efforts, handle it with as much simplicity as possible. Address only what is necessary. Resist the temptation to expand the issue, then gently return your awareness to the deeper purpose of the day. The portal cannot reveal its clearest messages when all of your energy is being consumed by emotional fires that do not need to be burning. Another obstacle tends to affect those who are highly intelligent, highly informed, and deeply interested in spiritual systems. These individuals often understand the language of transformation exceptionally well. They can explain energetic principles, lunar cycles, manifestation theories, and spiritual frameworks with remarkable accuracy. Yet they frequently encounter one hidden challenge. They become observers of their experiences rather than participants in them. The mind becomes so active that it begins analyzing every sensation before the sensation has even fully arrived. Every emotional shift is categorized. Every intuitive impression is dissected. Every moment of awareness is immediately translated into theory. Knowledge is valuable. Understanding provides context. It helps us navigate unfamiliar territory. But knowledge is not the same thing as direct experience. Reading a map and walking the landscape are two entirely different activities. The 6-6 portal communicates primarily through feeling. It speaks through intuition, sensation, emotional movement, subtle knowing, and shifts that often arrive before logic can explain them. If you spend the entire day attempting to intellectually decode every signal, you may end up examining the wrapping paper while missing the gift itself. Today, give yourself permission to feel before understanding. When an unexpected emotion arises, sit with it. When a realization appears, allow it to exist without immediately demanding evidence. When something shifts inside you, experience the shift before turning it into an explanation. Analysis can happen later, reflection can happen later, interpretation can happen later, but the feeling itself only exists in the present moment. If you postpone experiencing it in favor of understanding it, the moment passes. For this portal, sensitivity will serve you more effectively than analysis. Trust what arrives through feeling first. The final mistake in this section may seem surprisingly practical, yet it influences every spiritual experience more than most people realize. It is the tendency to pursue spiritual openness while neglecting the physical body. Many people unconsciously separate the two. They imagine spiritual growth as something that exists above the body rather than through it. Yet every insight, every intuitive impression, every emotional breakthrough, every energetic shift must ultimately pass through a physical system in order to be perceived. Your body is not separate from the experience. It is the instrument receiving it. Imagine trying to listen to a beautiful piece of music through damaged speakers. The music may be perfect, but the reception becomes distorted. The same principle applies here. A body that is exhausted, dehydrated, overstimulated, undernourished, or neglected is less capable of receiving subtle information. The portal does not stop working. The receiver simply becomes less responsive. That is why caring for your physical well-being today is not separate from spiritual practice. It is part of spiritual practice. Move gently. Rest when needed. Stay hydrated. Nourish yourself. Pay attention to your physical state with the same care you give your energetic state. The more supported your body feels, the more clearly you will recognize what the portal is attempting to reveal. And as we continue through the remaining mistakes, you will begin to see that every one of them points toward the same deeper truth. The portal is not asking you to become something different. It is asking you to remove the distractions that prevent you from recognizing what has already been trying to emerge within you. As this portal continues to unfold, there is another truth many people overlook, one that seems almost too ordinary to matter, and yet quietly determines how much of today's energy you are actually capable of receiving. The tendency to separate spiritual practice from physical care has convinced countless people that awakening happens somewhere above the body rather than through it. Yet every realization, every intuitive message, every emotional breakthrough, every moment of expanded awareness must pass through a physical system before it can become conscious experience. That means the condition of your body today matters more than most people realize. Give yourself more water than you normally would. Choose nourishment that leaves you feeling clear rather than weighed down. Allow movement to become part of the day, not as a performance, not as another task to complete, but as a simple act of keeping energy in motion. Step outside, if only briefly. Let sunlight touch your skin. Let fresh air interrupt the closed circuits of routine. The 6-6 portal does not hover above your life. It moves through your life. It moves through your nervous system, your breath, your awareness, your physical presence. A body sustained by hydration, rest, nourishment, and attention becomes a more receptive channel than one struggling beneath exhaustion, stress, stimulants, and neglect. Too many people normalize depletion and then wonder why subtle energies feel difficult to access. Today, your physical well-being is not separate from the practice, it is part of the practice itself. Then there is another trap that appears precisely when people begin looking outward rather than inward. It emerges through comparison, on portal days especially. Social platforms become crowded with stories. Someone describes a powerful vision, someone else shares a profound sign. Another person recounts an emotional breakthrough so dramatic it sounds almost cinematic. Before long, an invisible measuring system begins operating inside the mind. You start evaluating your own experience against the experiences being reported by others. Perhaps your day feels quieter. Perhaps your insights arrive gently rather than dramatically. Perhaps nothing seems spectacular at all. And in that moment, a dangerous thought appears. Maybe the portal is not working for me. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm not sensitive enough. That thought alone can disconnect you from everything the day is trying to offer, because the moment you begin comparing your inner reality to someone else's description, you abandon your own experience. Your attention leaves the place where transformation is occurring and becomes occupied with judgment. What makes this especially deceptive is that you are not comparing yourself to another person's actual experience. You are comparing yourself to a version of their experience that has already been translated into language, edited by memory, filtered through perception, and presented publicly. Meanwhile, your experience remains alive, immediate, and unfolding in real time. The 6-6 portal does not distribute identical gifts to everyone. It never has. Different people stand at different stages of growth. Different lessons are ready to emerge. Different forms of clarity become relevant at different moments. What arises for you today is aligned with where you truly are, not where you imagine you should be. A subtle realization that lands with precision can change a life more profoundly than a dramatic vision that fades within days. Stay with what is yours. Remain present with what is actually unfolding inside you. Let your experience be enough exactly as it is. The 8th mistake reaches even deeper because it concerns the very relationship people have with spiritual energy itself. Many approach portal days as though they are entering a transaction. They prepare intentions, perform rituals, organize practices, and unconsciously expect a specific return on their effort. Somewhere beneath the surface exists the belief that if they complete the correct steps, the universe is obligated to provide a corresponding reward. Yet this perspective misses the living nature of what the portal actually represents. The 6-6 portal is not a machine responding to a sequence of inputs. It is not waiting for the correct combination of affirmations, crystals, words, or techniques before releasing a predetermined outcome. It responds to something much more fundamental. It responds to authenticity. It responds to presence. It responds to the quality of your relationship with yourself during the hours in which the convergence is active. There is a profound difference between performing a spiritual practice and genuinely inhabiting one. One person may complete every ritual perfectly while remaining emotionally disconnected. Another may do almost nothing formally and yet remain deeply honest, open, and present throughout the day. The second person often receives far more because they are meeting the portal where it actually exists. Real energy recognizes sincerity. It deepens wherever sincerity is present. It reaches further wherever honesty exists. Today, do not worry about perfection. Do not worry about saying the right thing or following the perfect process. Show up as you are. Bring your actual emotions, your actual questions, your actual awareness. Bring your genuine self rather than a spiritual performance. That is what the portal can meet. That is what it can amplify. And now we arrive at the final mistake, perhaps the most overlooked of all because almost nobody discusses what happens after the portal closes. Nearly every conversation focuses on how to prepare, what to avoid, and how to engage while the energy is active. Very few discuss the days that follow. Yet those days often determine whether anything meaningful remains. Here is what frequently happens. During the portal, clarity arrives. An insight becomes obvious. A realization settles into place. Something previously confusing suddenly makes sense. In the moment, It feels unforgettable. It feels impossible that such clarity could ever be lost. Yet over the next 48 to 72 hours, ordinary life gradually returns. Responsibilities reappear. Distractions multiply. Familiar routines reclaim attention. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the insight becomes covered, not erased, not destroyed, simply buried beneath the accumulation of daily activity. What felt vivid becomes distant. What felt life-changing becomes difficult to access with the same intensity. This is why integration matters so profoundly. Integration is what allows the portal's work to survive beyond the day itself. Fortunately, integration does not require anything complicated. It begins with something remarkably simple. Before the night of June 6th ends, write something down, not pages, not a detailed analysis. Just capture the clearest thing that arrived, the realization, the shift, the truth you understand now that you did not fully understand when the day began. Place it into language. Place it onto paper if possible. The act of physically writing creates a bridge between inner awareness and external reality. It anchors the experience. It gives the insight weight. Then, on June 7th, make one small choice that reflects what you learn, not a dramatic life overhaul, not a grand declaration. One conscious decision that would have been different before the portal. One action that demonstrates that clarity has entered your life rather than remaining a passing thought. This is how transformation becomes real. Without integration, the portal becomes a memorable experience. With integration, it becomes a turning point. The difference between those outcomes is surprisingly small, yet enormously important. Do not allow the work being done today to dissolve before next week arrives. Let it continue living through your choices, and as we step beyond the 9 mistakes themselves, a larger realization begins to emerge. The lessons hidden within every one of these mistakes point towards something many people misunderstand about lunar energy entirely. Most individuals relate to the moon as though it were weather. They observe it from a distance. They check the calendar, anticipate the influence, experience the effects, then wait for the next event to arrive. The moon becomes something happening to them rather than something happening with them, yet that perspective only reveals part of the picture, because the deeper relationship with lunar energy begins the moment you stop seeing yourself as a passive observer and start recognizing your participation within the process itself. And that understanding changes everything that follows. This misunderstanding sits at the heart of why so many people describe their spiritual journey with lunar energy as unpredictable. 1 month, everything feels powerful, synchronized, and unmistakably alive. Another month arrives and passes with almost no noticeable impact. Some full moons seem to unlock profound realizations, while others barely leave a trace. Some new moons appear to support intentions with extraordinary precision, while others feel as though every intention dissolves before it ever gains momentum. Most people assume these fluctuations originate from the lunar cycle itself. They assume the moon is somehow stronger during certain periods and weaker during others, yet the deeper truth is far more revealing. The inconsistency is rarely coming from the lunar energy. More often, it emerges from the relationship being brought to that energy. The moon remains engaged in its cycle regardless of whether you are paying attention. Its rhythm continues, its movement continues, its influence continues. What changes is the level of awareness, presence, and participation you bring to that rhythm. Many people believe mastering lunar energy means becoming exceptionally skilled at interpreting calendars, understanding transits, memorizing phases, or learning increasingly complex astrological language. Those tools certainly provide useful context. They help create understanding. They offer perspective, but they are not the practice itself. Knowing about cycle and participating in a cycle are two very different experiences. True mastery begins when the lunar cycle stops being an occasional event that captures your attention and becomes an ongoing relationship that shapes your awareness throughout the entire month. This shift changes everything. Instead of waiting for dramatic peaks, you begin recognizing the subtle movement occurring between those peaks. Instead of treating the new moon and full moon as isolated experiences, you begin experiencing the entire arc that connects them. That arc is where most of the real work happens. Consider the new moon. Many people view it as the primary moment of creation, the point where intentions are planted and possibilities begin. Yet what follows matters just as much. The waxing phase, the 14 days stretching from the new moon toward the full moon, is not empty space between events. It is an active period of accumulation. It is an invitation to build momentum. It is the season of supporting your intentions with action. As the moon gradually gathers light, you are being invited to gather commitment, consistency, and movement. Yet many people spend this phase waiting. They set intentions during the new moon, then become passive. They stop participating. They assume the energetic work has already been completed. Then, when the full moon arrives carrying intensity, emotion, revelation, and amplification, they feel overwhelmed because they never developed the momentum required to meet that energy consciously. The opposite side of the cycle is misunderstood just as often. The waning phase, the 14 days between the full moon and the next new moon, is frequently treated as a period of decline. Many assume the energy is fading and therefore less important. In reality, the waning phase carries its own profound purpose. It is the phase of integration. It is the period where revelations become choices. It is where awareness becomes action. It is where you release what the full moon revealed no longer belongs. Every truth that surfaced during the full moon is asking for a response during the waning cycle. Every pattern that became visible is asking to be addressed. Every realization that emerged is asking to be embodied. Yet many people skip this stage almost entirely. They acknowledge what the full moon showed them, then continue carrying the same habits, the same attachments, the same emotional burdens into the next cycle. When the following new moon arrives, they attempt to create something new while still holding everything they were meant to release. And this is precisely why the timing of the 6-6 portal matters so much. The portal is not appearing in isolation. It exists within a very specific energetic environment. The blue moon of May 31st remains behind us. The new moon of June 15th remains ahead of us. We're currently standing inside the waning portion of the lunar cycle. That means the dominant energy available right now is not primarily about acquisition. It is not primarily about expansion. It is not primarily about reaching outward. It is about integration. It is about release. It is about becoming honest with what the blue moon illuminated. The 6-6 portal enters this landscape as a concentrated point of opportunity. It creates a powerful opening inside the waning phase itself. It allows the work of release, reflection, and integration to happen with greater awareness and greater intention than ordinary days typically allow. This is why understanding the energetic quality of a period matters just as much as understanding the event taking place within it. The portal is amplifying the work that this phase already supports. It is inviting you to engage more consciously with what has already been unfolding beneath the surface since the blue moon. When people speak about mastering lunar energy, this is what they often miss. Mastery is not about becoming obsessed with events. It is about developing sensitivity to the entire cycle. It is about recognizing that every phase carries a different invitation. Every stage asks something different of you. Every transition contains its own wisdom. The new moon asks you to begin. The waxing cycle asks you to build. The full moon asks you to see clearly. The waning cycle asks you to release and integrate. The person who learns to participate consciously in each stage develops a completely different relationship with lunar energy than the person who only notices the dramatic moments. Over time, the cycle stops feeling random. It stops feeling unpredictable. It becomes coherent. Patterns emerge. Timing becomes clearer. Awareness deepens. What once felt mysterious begins to reveal its structure. This is why those who have been following this journey understand something many people are only beginning to discover. Lunar energy is not a collection of separate events scattered across a calendar. It is an ongoing relationship, and like every meaningful relationship, its depth is determined by consistency. It grows stronger through honesty. It becomes more precise through presence. It reveals more when you continue showing up, not only during moments of excitement, but during the quieter phases as well. The individuals who experience the greatest transformation are rarely the ones chasing every new event. They are the ones developing a steady connection to the rhythm beneath all the events. They are learning to live inside the cycle rather than merely observing it from the outside. And that understanding becomes increasingly important as we move toward June 15th. Because everything discussed so far, the blue moon, the period of pause that followed, the 6-6 portal itself, these are not isolated experiences. They are interconnected movements within a larger process. Each one has been preparing the ground for what comes next. Each one has been revealing another layer of the same story. If you have been paying attention, you may already feel that something larger has been developing beneath the surface since May. Certain emotions have become impossible to ignore. Certain truths have continued returning despite attempts to move past them. Certain questions have remained present, waiting for resolution. None of that has been random. None of it has been disconnected. The journey unfolding between May and the new moon on June 15th forms a continuous progression. The blue moon amplified what needed to be seen. The pause invited reflection. The 6-6 portal creates a point of convergence where those insights can begin transforming into conscious awareness. And what arrives on June 15th has the potential to reorganize how you understand everything that has been happening internally during these weeks. This is why context matters. A powerful experience without context often remains an isolated moment. A powerful experience understood within a larger framework becomes guidance. It becomes direction. It becomes something you can actually use. There's an enormous difference between feeling something significant and understanding what that significance is asking of you. As we continue moving toward the new moon, that difference will become increasingly important. The people who have remained present throughout this unfolding process will not simply recognize the energy when it arrives. They will understand how it connects to everything that came before it. And that understanding may prove to be the most valuable gift of all.